There we go. All right. Little technical difficulty. Well, hello. My name is Michelle Tilley, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and all of our panelists and all of you for coming out tonight. This is an important topic, and this is what democracy is all about, is to talk about these issues and work through them together. So thanks, everyone, for your time and attention tonight. I grew up in Comanche, Oklahoma, down in southern Oklahoma. I've lived both here in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City. I'm an attorney. I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church, and my values are rooted in faith and fairness and family and common sense. And I'm both passionate and pragmatic about ways that we can make the state better, and that's the kind of work that I work on. And I believe State Question 820 is one of those things. I am a mom. I have 2 teenagers. We've raised them here in Oklahoma. I've done PTA and class parties and Girl Scout meetings as their leader. I've spent the last 17 plus years with kids every single day. And I have every reason to want to make this state the best that it can be for them, the safest that it can be for them, the strongest and the best. They're looking at colleges now, and I want them to stay here and raise their families here too. State Question 820 helps do that. Many people that I know have been surprised that I have taken up this work big mantle on this issue. But I've done it because safety, fairness, and opportunity are coming with State Question 820. As a mom, I want Oklahoma to have well-funded schools, law enforcement agencies, health care, and local government infrastructure, and we are falling behind on these. State Question 820 will legalize, regulate, and tax recreational marijuana for adults. A study from one of the country's leading economic firms have estimated that by passing State Question 820, we will bring almost $500 million of new tax revenue in the next 5 years to Oklahoma. And that means $100 million annually that we will be able to spend on schools and law enforcement, healthcare, and our other priorities. When schools have enough money to pay and retain great teachers, we know that's good for our kids. And that's better than cracking down and spending that money cracking down on grown-ups who are using marijuana. Legalizing marijuana is also going to give a lot of communities an economic boost. That same study that I referenced before estimates legal marijuana businesses are poised to generate billions of dollars in economic activity across our state. And in rural areas, this is huge because it's providing jobs that aren't there that allow people to stay, some of them tied to agriculture and retail and the other ancillary businesses. And this is a very, very good thing for our local governments who need this funding for infrastructure. It also helps improve public safety. Law enforcement is underfunded, and it spends a lot of time chasing down minor offenses related to marijuana. This is wasteful. We need to free up that time and that resources so that law enforcement can use their time and money to prevent serious and violent crimes and be able to spend their time devoted to those things. And speaking as a mother, I don't want any kids to have their lives permanently ruined because they make a mistake. And a criminal arrest for having just a small amount of marijuana makes it hard for them to go to college or get a job, and it follows them their entire life. Under State Question 820, we will stop those arrests, and people who have had them in the past can have them expunged, which gives them a second chance at building their life and providing for their families. Finally, if we're going to have marijuana in the state, and we do already, and it's been here for a long, 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 long time, we need for it to be properly regulated and safe. Under 820, products will be tested, safe, and only available to adults 21 and older, and they are studied and tested to determine the potency of things and screened for unsafe contaminants. They're tracked, traced, and labeled from seed to sale. These regulations are important to keep marijuana out of the hands of kids. We know it's working in other states. In Colorado, a peer-reviewed study published in the Journal of American Medical Association has shown a decrease in teen marijuana. This helps undercut the black market because people who want to legally use and businesses that want to follow the law and play by the rules will not be facing these criminal issues anymore. 18 states have legalized marijuana. Colorado's seen $500 million invested in their schools. These states are more prosperous because their voters decided to ignore scare tactics, listen to the facts, and vote yes.
Thank you. Damien Shade, you have 5 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and the other esteemed panelists who are sitting here with me. My name's Damien Shade, and I'm the executive director of an organization called Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform. And we approach the entire issue of this ballot initiative from a very different perspective than I'm sure my law enforcement friends to my right and my friends from the campaign will be approaching it. I'm going to start with just a few numbers to talk about. From 2010 to 2018, there were between 6 to 8 million marijuana-related arrests. I want to say that again. From 2010 to 2018, there were between 6 and 8 million marijuana arrests. In 2018, 43% of all drug-related arrests were for a marijuana conviction. And the racial disparities in those arrests and those incarceral terms are quite remarkable. It is 4 times as likely for someone who looks like me, that is a black person, to be arrested and incarcerated for marijuana offenses, and the vast majority of those offenses are possession or possession-adjacent offenses. One of the big pieces of all of the questions around addiction that we must answer in this framework is, what is the addiction status of Oklahoma's current system, of both our incarceral system and our larger mental health, public health, and addiction apparatus? According to the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Use Services, current funding allows us to help about 1 in 3 Oklahomans in need. That means that 2 out of 3 Oklahomans who need significant mental health or addiction treatment cannot currently get it. So that leads me, of course, to the question of the policy behind State Question 820. With those facts in mind, it is hard for me to see policy arguments that stand against $500 million worth of addiction and education and social resources for the state of Oklahoma over the next 5 years. Further than that, when we look at the racial disparities in those arrests and outcomes, I'm sure D.A. Kunstweiler will make it clear. Very few people are going to jail and getting criminal convictions for marijuana in Tulsa County right now. But in 2018, massive amounts of people still were getting pulled into the system. And in 2023 in rural counties, we still see racial disparities amongst communities, Native American communities, and communities of color across the state. And so enforcement has never been equal. We know from the literature that black and white communities utilize cannabis at roughly the same rates. And yet, black people still see, even to this day, those pronounced disparities in outcomes. So there's just a few questions that I have for the audience. Does it make sense that someone who sold weed in 2017 should have a harder time getting a job, getting a house, or having a normal life in 2023? Does it make sense that police, and more importantly, prosecutors, should spend any time and resources enhancing or increasing people's sentences for old marijuana convictions, utilizing any public safety resources around old marijuana convictions? Does it make any sense for the state of Oklahoma to wait for Arkansas or one of the many other states that border us and neighbor us who are looking at recreational marijuana, and for us to say, we want the dollars that would be coming to Oklahoma to go to Arkansas and Texas and other states when they could be going to critical law enforcement who right now have a fentanyl crisis that is the most terrifying thing, according to judges and prosecutors that I talk to, that they have ever seen. The idea that they don't need that $100 million a year, that they don't need those resources to battle real addiction crisis, to battle real overdose crisis throughout our state seems remarkable. I'll end with a quick story. I'm friends with a young person who grew up in Sapulpa. He was a young white man driving around with a joint when he was arrested in his mouth long before marijuana was legal. And he was able to get his criminal record expunged. He was able to have a new life because his parents had money and he came from the right neighborhood. I think the criminal legal question that has to be asked is, why can't everyone who comes from neighborhoods like I came from have that same opportunity?
Thank you, Mr. Shade. Steve Kunzweiler, you have 5 minutes.
I have 5 takeaways for you with regard to my concerns about State Question 820. First and foremost, State Question 820 hurts our children. It is hard to imagine that this state question expressly changes the threshold for what constitutes child endangerment. Think about that for one moment and let it sink in. It specifically states that it is okay to smoke and use marijuana around children. It takes away your ability to put children in better situations which they deserve. If passed, this measure would prohibit a court's ability to consider marijuana abuse and its impact upon children in child custody and visitation cases. Now, a mother won't have the support of the courts when she's trying and asking to not have the father who's smoking marijuana during visitations. We cannot allow that to happen to our kids. We need much more research and data about the impact of marijuana on the development of a child's brain. We now know that a person's brain is not fully developed until 25 years of age. Research has already established that individuals who started smoking marijuana heavily in their teens and had ongoing marijuana use disorder lost an average of 8 IQ points between the ages of 13 and 38. Research has also established that marijuana use during pregnancy is linked to lower birth weights and increased risk of brain and behavior problems in babies. Second, State Question 820 does not limit THC content. In other words, the potency of marijuana is unlimited. This is creating a public health crisis for all of us. Pot in the 60s had a THC potency rate of about 2%. THC potency now can reach upwards of 30% concentration in certain strands, and even worse. We now are seeing marketed some edibles and oils and vapes with THC concentrations as high as 95%. That's happening in the world we're living already. Now research is proving that marijuana is addictive. Research is proving that marijuana leads to worsening mental health problems like anxiety, depression, psychosis, and suicide ideation. Third, and this is hard to imagine, but passing State Question 820 would make Oklahoma the most pro-marijuana state in the country. Oklahoma already has the most usage, and it has the most dispensaries in the nation. 9.31% of Oklahoma adults already have a medical marijuana card. The next highest state is New Mexico, and they stand at 4.35%. That's right. Oklahoma is double that of any other state. Oklahoma has 2,129 dispensaries, or one for every 1,200 adults living in the state. By comparison, California is second with 1,440 dispensaries, which means they have a dispensary for every 16,848 adults living in their state. In Oklahoma, we have more dispensaries than gas stations. Incredibly, State Question 820 would elevate the rights of marijuana users over the rights of other Oklahomans. State Question 820 limits the rights of Oklahoma landlords to keep marijuana out of their rental properties. It only provides for a ridiculous $25 fine for smoking marijuana in public places, like parks and parades and stadiums. However, the police can't even detain someone who they witness who's smoking publicly marijuana. In your school, State Question 820 limits the punishment of a high school student for using or sharing marijuana on school grounds. The punishment, up to 4 hours of counseling and a maximum fine of $100, regardless of how many times they violate that law. State Question 820 would mandate the release of dangerous criminals whose past drug convictions may have been a factor in their sentencing. Fourth, this measure would actually hurt law enforcement's efforts in going after illegal marijuana growing operations. We now have international crime syndicates operating within our state because of the veil of legality that was created by medical marijuana. Despite the existence of medical marijuana, Oklahoma has the largest black market marijuana network in the nation. We've seen organized crime bring violence into our communities. For example, just a few months ago, we had 4 execution-style killings in rural Kingfisher County due to a dispute among these out-of-country based criminals.
Thank you, Mr. Coontz. By the way, we'll get to your 5th point later on.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dart?
Thank you. So I know as the public health director here in Tulsa County, my opinion on these issues that impact society really is irrelevant. So I just want to look at what is the issue, what's the benefit and the negative impact of these issues. And I think you've heard a lot on both sides of this. I don't want to repeat what you've already heard, but we know that there are some pros to recreational marijuana in the literature, and that's what I'm talking about. And that was touched on by our panelists as far as increased regulation as a safer product. We know that enforcement can be dicey, and some of that raises enforcement. And we talk about the economy and what it brings in, but societal impact, and from a public health perspective, is where I get really concerned, and it's pretty evident in the literature. And frankly, I've got colleagues in states that already have both recreational and medical marijuana, especially in Colorado and Washington and Oregon. And what they imparted to me is pretty much all the same information I found in the literature when I did my study. So bottom line is that at this juncture and in the literature, legalizing recreational marijuana will result in some serious societal costs. We're talking about marijuana harms anyone who uses the drug. Societal costs include paying for increased emergency room visits, medical care, addiction treatment for the uninsured, more victims of drug driving accidents and workplace accidents. And just think about the workplace policies we're going to have to look at if this is passed. And legalizing marijuana will put one more harmful substance in our society that costs more revenue than it generates. That's in the literature. Bottom line is that from an environmental impact, which we haven't really talked about or looked at, but legalizing recreational marijuana, it increases the growth of the plant, which ultimately is bad for the environment. According to studies in 2021, results show that both indoor and outdoor cannabis growing is water intensive. The high water demand leads to water pollution and diversion, which could negatively impact the ecosystem. And studies found out that cannabis plants emit a significant amount of biogenic volatile organic compounds, which cause indoor air quality issues. So we know that we haven't really even talked about that environmental impact, and it's important that we look at all sides of this issue. Legalizing recreational marijuana creates a big marijuana industry. And, public health, we fought big tobacco for years, and so we're looking at the big marijuana industry, and big marijuana is already using similar tactics to big tobacco, which markets cigarettes using ads that appeal to kids. You all remember Joe Campbell, that cartoon character. Marijuana food products are frequently colorful, they're sweet, they're branded with cartoons to attract children, and it's available in kid-friendly forms, such as gummy bears and lollipops, and products sometimes resemble familiar brands, like Butterfinger or Kit Kat. So we're talking about Butterfinger or Kit Kat candy bars. And then, bottom line is that healthcare experts are really concerned about what recreational marijuana really does. I mean, the research is clear that smoking marijuana causes damage to lung tissues, causes respiratory problems. Secondhand marijuana smoke is also dangerous, and Steve talked about impact on children. Research shows that smoking one marijuana joint is as damaging to the lungs as smoking 5 tobacco cigarettes. Marijuana can also contain 5 times as much carbon monoxide concentration and 3 times as much tar as tobacco. There's a higher risk of heart attacks and strokes in the hours immediately after smoking cannabis. And vaping is also dangerous and likely leads to enhanced ingestion of toxic ammonia and result in neurobehavioral impairment. So ammonia ingested while vaping can result in lung irritation, nervous system effects, and asthma attacks. And right now, nationally, some of the public health associations that oppose legalizing marijuana for recreational use include the American Medical Association, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, the American Academy of Children and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Really, in Colorado especially, There's been an increase in traffic fatalities and hospitalizations and marijuana-related poisonings following legalization. In Washington State, the number of traffic deaths due to marijuana-impaired drivers doubled in the year after recreational marijuana was legalized. We talked about Colorado, but the number of fatal accidents rose by 62% since recreational use was legalized. So law enforcement officers rely on breathalyzer tests to identify drunk drivers. There's no equivalent for drug drivers. And then studies also show that legalization has affected the workforce and business in general. According to Quest Diagnostics, 47% of the U.S. workforce tested positive for oral marijuana between 2013 and 15. And
Thank you, Dr. Dart.
thank you.
So I'm going to take a daring step here and put a microphone on both ends of the table here so that we don't have to struggle for the mic. Ms. Tilley, I noticed you were taking notes like crazy down there. You want to take a couple minutes? Did you have some rebuttal thoughts? And Steve already used some.
Are we on? I'm on this time. Hello? This one's different than the one before. Can you hear me? Oh. Oh, hi.
We will fight for the same microphone.
All right, that'll work. Hi. Well, I do take notes in all my life, so just wanting to make sure that I'm getting everything down that's being said. So, there are a lot of points here. A lot of these arguments are arguments that we've heard for years, not just related to marijuana, but even other issues. One of the interesting